It gives me special pleasure to record this presentation in the Alton J Bruns Library at the Raalte Institute of Hope College. It is a distinct honor to present this Distinguished Alumni Award citation posthumously to Dr. Alton J Bruins. His association with Hope College goes back to 1946, when he enrolled in the college shortly after his discharge from the Navy. Alton was on campus either part or all of the last 8 decades, either as a student or a faculty member or an active retiree. In 1950, Alton earned a BA degree from Hope College, magna cum laude, and in 1953, a BD degree from Western Theological Seminary, along with Henry J. Paul Senior Excellence Award. He went on to earn an STM degree in 1957 from Union Seminary, and in 1962 a PhD in the history of education at New York University. While in graduate school, he began his service as minister of the Reformed Church in America. He left parish ministry in 1966 when he joined the faculty of Hope College as assistant professor of religion. Alton moved rapidly through the ranks to professor by 1970 and was honored in 1981 with appointment as the first Everett J. and Hattie E. Bleckink Professor of Religion, a position he held until his retirement in 1992. He chaired the department from 1977 to 1984, when he was appointed Dean for Arts and Humanities. He also served as acting provost in fall 1989 while I was on sabbatical. In January 1994, Alton came out of retirement to become the founding director of the A.C. Van Raalte Institute. He served in this role until June 2002, and in January 2004, he was named the Philip Phelps Jr. Research Professor. He was also honored with a Festschrift in 2007, a goodly heritage, essays in honor of the Reverend Dr. Alton J. Bruins at 80, for which I was the editor. A consummate scholar and archivist, Alton accumulated a vast amount of historical material. The Van Raalte Institute has numerous filing cabinets that he filled during his decades of research. His files on Van Raalte, founder of Holland and co-founder of Hope College, alone total several thousand. Alton is the author or editor of 15 books, including Envisioning Hope College, letters written by Albertus C. Van Raalte to Philip Phelps Jr., 1857 to 1875, Albertus and Christina, the Van Raalte Family Homes and Roots, and The Americanization of a Congregation, a history of Third Reformed Church. Alton's final publication was a list of notable Hope College alumni in Appendix 7 of Hope College at 150, Anchored in Faith, Educating for Leadership and Service in a Global Society, by me and others. Alton Bruins entered into eternity on March 23, 2020, at age 92. His outstanding service to Hope College, his contributions to scholarship, and his faithful service to church and society make him worthy to be counted among our notable alumni.
David, I'm reflecting on your father's long career. As you know, David, we talk at Hope, we talk about our graduates being people who are anchored in hope, and then people who go out to be agents of hope. How did your father display that to you? Where did you see that? And do you have any specific examples of where you look at your dad's life and say he was an anchor of hope in this way?
Well, I think he, lived the way he lived his life. He led by example, doing the work that he did in things like historical preservation and in, say, like getting the Van Raalte Institute established. It took a lot of time and effort, but he was able to, he worked with other people, and he worked with, worked with the school to get the institution up and operating, getting the joint archives up and operating. This was all, it was a matter of vision and just having the patience and the persistence to get it all done. And I think that's really, the monument to which the values in which that you're discussing. I think that's really, what he did and how he did it. So
that's even better than a story. It permeates everything, permeates the whole life. The whole story is a story of being.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. he wanted to be a college professor, and that it worked out to be at Hope was something that he was always very happy about. It was where he wanted to be, and he had the great ability, and it just something I didn't really appreciate till much later in my life. He got to do so many of the things he wanted to do. He was a minister, he was a college professor, he worked in admin, and he got to be an historian and engage in historical preservation.
Well, good afternoon. It's an honor to be with you, Elaine and Mary, as we honor your father and your husband. He's had a remarkable career and did so much to impact Hope College and our community, and I'm excited to talk about all of that. Why don't we start with, as you reflect on his career, what do you think he was most proud of? Or maybe another way to phrase it is, what are you most proud of as you reflect on your husband's career?
Well, he was, I think, most proud of the Raalte Institute, which he was the founding director of, and hung in there really until he just simply couldn't go anymore.
Mary, how about you? What stands out to you when you think about your dad's career?
Well, he loved his teaching years, very much so, and to transition into more executive, leadership roles there for a few years was really, I think he did some heart searching on that about whether that was the right place for him, because he worried or was concerned about the fact that if he moved out of the classroom, that he would no longer be fulfilling a mission to minister to students as he did. And I guess my response at the time was, Dad, you just get to minister to everybody then, rather than just the kids who choose to have your class. And I can remember he kind of went, oh, and he took the job. So students were, I think he made a really big impact on a lot of them. When he did pass away last year, we were both so surprised at how many of his former students we heard from. It was amazing, and a lot of stories that we had never heard. It just was really reflective of, he loved his students, and that's why he got the education he did, so that he could come back, and of all wonderful places to teach, he came back to Hope.
And touched so many lives, and obviously they reflected on it years later that they were still impacted by his work.
It seems so very much, and that was really touching during COVID when we couldn't see people in person, but in a way it was better because people then wrote what being, going down a receiving line kind of thing would not have allowed them to say.
Yes, that's very cool. That's very cool. Elaine, as you reflect back on his time at Hope as a student, what do you think it was about his time here and his education at Hope that put him on the path to have so much success and so much impact?
I'm sure he had a call to ministry. He, being the eldest son of the family, was to take over the farm. And this farm had been purchased in the 1800s, 1846 or so, and had stayed in the family and is still in the family. So it was very important that the son take over. Well, he early on decided that he wasn't to be a farmer and wanted to go to college. It was here, I think, at Hope that he decided not just pastoral ministry, but he wanted to teach. Well, he had a love of history, which he inherited from his father. He became very interested in Raalte and Hope, of course, and then eventually in Holland. In fact, he rummaged around at the site of the Raalte house, which was dilapidated at that point. And for years, we had a brick from the Raalte house, which we used as a doorstop. And as far as I know, that's in the Joint Archives here.
Oh, wow. That's remarkable, remarkable. We're grateful that he decided to come to Hope as opposed to the path of being a farmer, and that during his time at Hope, he really discerned what he felt called to do.
Being at the Institute, he could live and breathe Raalte and Hope and Holland every day.
And here he grew human souls as opposed to growing crops on a farm.
Yeah, right. Good way to put
Mary, as you reflect on your dad, what lessons stand out, lessons that your dad taught you?
Probably the longest one, and I probably didn't listen to it as early in life as I should have, was probably be patient and be kind. I really can only remember 1 or 2 times growing up that he yelled at me, and I knew, well, if he was yelling, yeah, I guess I better rethink my strategy. Patience and kindness are, I believe, and I think he believed, was a mission on its own, and kind of missionary work. Don't know how it's going to turn out. You'll probably never know. I can't ever remember an instance where he wasn't patient or kind.
I don't remember him yelling at you.
Oh, I remember it very distinctly because they stood out.
I love the lesson of patience and kindness. Our world certainly needs more patience and kindness right now, and I love your vernacular that patience and kindness can be mission work. That's beautifully said, beautifully articulated. Thank you. And it strikes me as you're talking, and Elaine, hearing your story of when he decided to come to Hope, that there were many moments that took quiet courage on his part. To come to college itself was an act of bravery when it was not built into his family that that's the path.
I don't believe, as the story goes, that, and Mom had said too, that he was not really supported at home to do that, and to go that far. He was the first one in his family to go to college. He had a couple of his siblings who finished with 8th grade. Grew up during the Depression when things were hard, so for him to kind of go out of here and go do something else, and not only just Milwaukee, he went to the East Coast and did those things. In his quiet, unassuming way, he just went and did those things.
After high school was in the summer of '45, he enlisted in the Navy. And almost immediately after that, the war ended, so it was a one-year commitment, not to the end of the war, which gave him the 4 years of GI Bill. There was no question that this was what he was to do.
Well, and the funny thing about choosing the Navy is he had never learned to swim. So 6 weeks of basic training were more than a little bit rough for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he remembered the person in charge saying finally, "Oh, haul him out."
Well, because they threw him in the pool and couldn't swim, and so they gave him a chance to float to the top and get himself over, and apparently that wasn't going well. So, great embarrassment, and he always kind of was very sheepish when that story came out. But again, a testament to this is what he wanted so badly,
Very definitely.
that he was ready. He would do what it would take.
Determined to be successful.
Very
and
determined.
Find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, we are very grateful for and proud of the work that Elton did. So thank you, and thanks for the chance to celebrate his work and his legacy together.
Thank you for asking.
Well, we are incredibly grateful for and proud of the work that your husband and your dad did and his lasting legacy and impact on our campus and our community. So it's my honor to present to you with his 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Very lovely. Oh, God, it's
Very
lovely.
beautiful.
He would like it.
Yes.
He would like it.
Hi, I'm Scott Travis, Executive Director of Alumni Engagement at Hope College. We're here in Irving, Texas at ExxonMobil headquarters to present the 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award to Craig Morford. Craig Morford's name is synonymous with excellence in the legal profession, having served in some of its highest positions and receiving its highest honors. After recently serving as the Chief Legal and Compliance Officer of Cardinal Health, Craig is currently serving as Vice President and General Counsel of ExxonMobil. Prior to entering the private sector, he served more than 20 years in a variety of leadership positions with the United States Department of Justice. He spent much of his career as a federal prosecutor, pursuing corruption and organized crime cases in northern Ohio. He then served as the U.S. Attorney in Detroit, Michigan, and the U.S. Attorney in Nashville, Tennessee. In 2007, he was appointed by President George W. Bush as Acting Deputy Attorney General, the second highest ranking official in the Department of Justice. In this role, he was responsible for overseeing the work of over 100,000 employees nationwide, including the FBI. Among other honors, in 2008, he received the Edmund Randolph Award, the highest award given by the Department of Justice, as well as Attorney General's Awards for Distinguished Service in both 2003 and 2005. He was named the Outstanding Assistant United States Attorney and was inducted as a Fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers. Craig Morford has demonstrated exceptional achievement within his field and is an excellent example of the impact a Hope College graduate can have. It is our honor to name him as a 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award recipient.
Well, Craig, it's an honor to be with you. You've had a remarkable career and done some fascinating, interesting, and important things. But before we get to that, let's look back. When you reflect back on your time at Hope, what was it about those 4 years that for you were transformational? What was it about your time at Hope that put you on the path to success?
Yeah, so the biggest transformational event that happened to me at Hope College was the Washington Honors Semester program. And the funny thing about it is it wasn't even on my radar. Wasn't applying for the program, wasn't interested in the program. In hindsight, I was in very much need of the program. I was kind of flopping around a little bit, but one of my professors, Dr. Zodaway in the political science department, approached me one day and he said, I have an opportunity and I think it'd be perfect for you. I think you really need this. You could benefit from it. And make a long story short, I ended up enrolling and going to Washington, and it was a life-changing experience.
Did you have an internship when you were there for the DC semester?
Yeah, we had two.
And do you remember where you worked?
Yes, I worked at Kimberly-Clark Legal Counsel.
Okay.
And then the second one was with a senator. It was Senator Schmidt of New Mexico.
Okay.
And his claim to fame was he had been an astronaut who walked on the moon.
Oh, wow.
The other thing about that semester that was special is it was the last few months of the Carter administration. Okay. And the country was in what President Carter had described as a malaise. We had super high inflation, we had high unemployment, and yet at the same time, there were the seeds starting to be sowed for what later became known as the Reagan Revolution, which was a time of great optimism, growth, which was a really kind of cool and unique time to have been in Washington. Of course, anytime you're in Washington at that age, it's a cool and unique time.
By the way, I also did the Washington, D.C. semester, and I also had Dr. Zodaway.
Oh, that's funny. And I think back at that, and what amazes me is to Dr. Zodaway, I wasn't just some student in a seat in a class. He actually knew me well enough to know what I needed, and that to me is pretty amazing. Dr. Zodaway's one example. There was another Professor Jeloma, who was an English professor, who took me under his wing and spent hours trying to teach me how to write and communicate better. And we'd go to pizza at Skiles and sit around and talk life. I mean, it was, I can count, 6, 7 professors who I got to know personally who knew me, which is just a different experience than a lot of people I know who I talk to them about their college experience.
As you look back on your time at Hope, what's the most special memory that stands out?
So it's interesting. I went to Washington, I came back, and then you kind of get back to reorienting yourself to campus. But as I came back, I found myself being more serious, as I say, about career, about myself. And then 3 weeks into that, I met a girl named Mary Jo Wester. We started dating. We fell in love. 2 years later, we got married, and just Friday we celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And just a wonderful life partner. And I know it's cliche, a lot of that happens at Hope, but it was that senior year, kind of coming back from Washington, having sort of a vision of what I want to do in my life, and then just meeting that special someone and all the memories of all the things we did. that year was probably one of the most special years of my life.
That's great. As you reflect back on your career, what are you most proud of?
I mean, God's blessed me in my career in crazy ways. And you and I were talking a little bit before we got started. We both served in White House, and that feeling I remember of walking in a room and sitting down at a table and looking around and seeing, Condoleezza Rice and Bob Gates, who was the Defense Secretary at the time, Hank Paulson, and thinking, the heck am I doing in this room? I don't belong here. Yeah. Somebody once told me, you don't belong there. Don't ever forget that. That's called humility. But nor does anybody else sitting in there. Right. That's called competence. You have every bit as much to add as they do, but you have no business there. And so it's that balance of confidence and humility. And I think being able to go to Washington where I didn't feel prepared, but being able to serve and look back and think of many things that I was able to touch and feel like I made them better by being there. And I always try to get up and say, what are the things that only I can do because God's put me in this position?
Let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing, your career, the amazing trajectory you've been on. Here we are at ExxonMobil, which is by market cap one of the largest companies in the world. You're the top lawyer. Talk to me a little bit about what you're doing now.
I don't think many people think about this, but the world's in a transition right now, and it's two parts transition, and we call it the dual challenge. Mm-hmm. A lot of people focus on the one part of it, which is incredibly important, which is the need to lower emissions for the sake of the environment. And the second part, which doesn't get as much play, is that we have a continuing development in the world in which people are improving their lives, people that live in abject poverty in places. In that economic development, there's a huge demand for energy. Half the world that doesn't use energy today is going to need energy tomorrow. So how do you do that? It's got to be through technology, it's got to be through innovation, it's got to be research, and that's what we do.
What was it about the broad aperture of knowledge, where you go both deep and wide? What was it about the liberal arts academic experience that you feel helped prepare you for your later success?
I think, particularly in today's world, but the kind of job I have, breadth of knowledge and breadth of thinking is really, really important. And so, my job is interesting because I'm internal counsel here, so I'm a lawyer, in-house lawyer. At the same time, I'm a corporate leader as general counsel. I lead an organization that has close to 400 lawyers, an organization of about 600 people, but I also interact with all the other vice presidents and presidents of the corporation, and you have to think broadly and you have to elevate. I don't think I could do this job if I didn't have that breadth of both breadth of knowledge, but also it's more breadth of thought, because you don't necessarily remember the facts and the knowledge as much as the thinking that comes out of that.
Yes.
The other thing I think is really important with a liberal arts education at a place like Hope that's faith-based is it really allows you to and causes you to look at what your core beliefs are and what's really important to you at that age where you're defining those things. And I think in today's world that is incredibly important, because you have those core values, those core beliefs, those principles that are sort of your anchor in life.
Yes. Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I love your description of it's not just liberal arts, but it's liberal arts with a strong faith environment.
Yeah.
And we talk about how that gives us a deeper motivation for our education. Because we love God, we have a deeper motivation to understand His creation. And because God commands us to love and serve others, we have a deeper motivation to educate ourselves and give ourselves the tools to go out into the world and do amazing things like you have done, to love and serve the world and to serve the people that God has put in our lives. So let's say you're fueling, pun intended, economic development.
There you go.
And I said, you're providing hope. You went to a college called Hope College. What does that word mean to you? What does that ideal mean to you? And one of the things we talk about at Hope a lot is that we're proud of the fact that we're one of the few institutions in the world, academic institutions, that's not named after a person or a geography. We're named after hope, this ideal that we happen to think the world is desperately in need of today. What does that mean for you? What does hope mean for you? And how do you, in your personal life and your professional life, how do you live out God's hope in the world that you live in?
I think part of it is realizing we're not in control.
Yeah.
God's in control. And then second, God loves us. And third is that God's all powerful. It doesn't mean, God's not a vending machine. You put your money in and you pull the thing and you get the candy bar you want. It's not that at all. But it's that idea that God has our best interests in mind, and even in the darkest times, there's hope because we know God is still there. We know we're His children. And so I start with that mindset. There's always hope for better. And then never give up on that, never lose sight of that, because there's somebody greater in charge than any one of us.
Well, Craig, it's an honor on behalf of Hope College for me to present you with the 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It's beautiful, but even more so, it's incredibly meaningful because of what hope has meant to me.
You've done a lot of remarkable things in the world, and we're proud of you.
Well, thanks.
Hello, my name is Andrew Ohm. I'm a member of the Hope College Alumni Board of Directors, and I'm here in sunny Seattle, Washington, at the University of Washington School of Medicine to celebrate Dr. Deborah Heydenburg Fuller, a graduate from the year 1987, and we are here to present her today with the Hope College Distinguished Alumni Award. Vaccine. A word that may have held little meaning to some people in recent years has suddenly become a word filled with so much possibility and hope. While most ignored or took for granted the presence of medicinal viral prevention, Dr. Deborah Fuller was dedicating her life and career to developing new and innovative vaccines, antivirals, and methods to distribute them safely and effectively. Dr. Fuller studied biology, Spanish, and mathematics at Hope College, where she participated in the renowned student research program, graduating in 1987. She initially worked in biotechnology and became a senior scientist developing vaccines against HIV, HBV, and other emerging infectious diseases, and co-inventing nucleic acid vaccine strategies she still employs in her research. In 2001, she earned a doctorate of philosophy in molecular and cellular pathology and transitioned to academia in 2004. She is currently serving as a professor in the Department of Microbiology at the University of Washington School of Medicine, and is chief of the Infectious Diseases and Translational Medicine Division at the Washington National Primate Research Center. She leads a team developing and optimizing nucleic acid vaccine technologies and has led the translation of 2 vaccines from bench to clinical trials, including the first DNA vaccine to induce protective levels of immunity in humans. She has authored 90 manuscripts and book chapters and is a co-inventor on over a dozen patents for vaccines and antivirals. Dr. Fuller is also the founder of biotechnology company Orlance Incorporated, which aims to advance nucleic acid vaccines for infectious diseases and cancer. A needle-free device to deliver vaccines into the skin has also been the focus for her work through Orlance. During the recent pandemic, Dr. Fuller has played a key role in the advancement of vaccines and antivirals for the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. Her lab has developed a second-generation nucleic acid vaccine for COVID-19 that entered human clinical trials in spring 2021 with the future hope of worldwide distribution. She has also played a key role as an expert to inform the community and public of the science behind the COVID-19 vaccines, having been featured on Bloomberg TV, CNN, and NPR, and having contributed to articles from the Washington Post, the Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, and several others. Her op-ed articles have been read by millions worldwide. She also presented an incredibly informative and popular webinar exclusively for Hope College alumni as part of Alumni Weekend 2021. We are thankful for Dr. Fuller's role in protecting and healing the global community from infectious diseases, and for her ability to effectively communicate the importance of and science behind these vaccines. We are proud to have her as part of our Hope College alumni community and honored to name her a Distinguished Alumni Award recipient of 2021.
Well, hi, Dr. Fuller. It's an honor to be with you. We're so proud at Hope to have one of our graduates working on literally the most important thing that the world is going through right now. Before we talk about what you're working on now, I'd love to start by reflecting back specifically on your time at Hope as a student. What do you remember from your time at Hope, and what transformational experiences happened at Hope that helped put you on the career path that you've been on?
Yeah, the most important thing that happened to me at Hope was a discovery of love for scientific research. And I would have never thought of going down that path had Dr. Gentile, who's my mentor in the Department of Biology, not given me a chance to come into his lab and experience what it's like to do research, to ask questions and form hypotheses. My goal was originally to actually become a physician. I came to Hope as a pre-med, and I just got fascinated by genetics in one of his classes, and learned that he was doing research. And I stood at his door as a sophomore, and I said, could I do research in your lab? And normally he didn't take sophomores. He waited till they were juniors or seniors, but he let me in the door, and the first experiments that I did were complete disasters, but I fell in love with the whole process, and that is really what put me on the path to what I am today.
Wow. It's great to hear that research still is one of our hallmarks, and we're proud to be a relatively small school, but a school that really focuses on student research and specifically students working with our faculty scholars, much like you had that experience with Dr. Gentile. Do you remember what research you were working on? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I can't forget that. It was actually, Dr. Gentile had a research program investigating how plants metabolize herbicides into potential mutagens that could cause potentially cancer. And it was really actually cutting edge research. And that's what was amazing, is that here's a small liberal arts college in Holland, Michigan, doing this really cutting edge research. In the 1980s, it was not common for undergraduates to do research like that at that level. And Hope College was unique and a standout in that regard.
So even back in college, you were working to cure human disease.
Exactly. That's really got my start.
What other memories, maybe co-curricular or extracurricular activities, were you involved in, and what do you remember from your 4 years at Hope College?
Yeah, I love the sport. So my freshman year, I joined the Hope College cross country team under Coach Vanderbilt. And one of my most delightful memories is that he would drive this big blue and orange bus around to bring us to different places to go run. So cross country could be boring, where you just, everybody just go run around the same streets and the same pathways, around the college or whatever. But instead, he made it interesting and exciting. But what it did was it also built a camaraderie in the team, because that bus ride there and the bus ride back was a great experience.
You got to know each other.
Yeah, exactly. And
on the blue and orange bus.
Yeah, on the blue and orange bus.
What a great memory. What a great memory. Obviously, you were very involved with research and with the biology department, but you also would have taken history classes and religion classes and classes in other areas, which is the hallmark of liberal arts, this wide aperture of knowledge. Talk to me a little bit about how the liberal arts contributed to your success today.
Yeah, I think a lot of students, when they go into the science and say, hey, I want to be a physician or I want to be a scientist, they think of, well, what I really need to care about is just the sciences, the math, the biology, and things like that. And what really is important is that liberal arts education, the ability to learn how to communicate your ideas. And that really comes from that broader liberal arts education. Every day I have to communicate our findings in research. Right. I had to convince people to give me funding. You can be the smartest person in the world and have the best idea in science, but if you can't communicate, nobody's going to give you money to do it, right? The whole broader liberal arts education has played such an important role. And I see this even in students who come and work in my lab as graduate students. Those who had a really strong liberal arts education tend to actually excel much more quickly than those who don't.
I love that. I love hearing that. Let's talk a little bit about your work today and what you're working on. It's I imagine it's interesting for you because you've spent your life working on vaccines, and now all of a sudden everyone in the world is talking about vaccines. Talk to me a little bit about what that feels like to all of a sudden have your area of expertise be the thing that the world is talking about.
I have been working on this all my life. For 30 years now. I've been working on vaccines, and so it's been my passion, and it's been foremost in my mind, of course, all this time. And now to see, everybody recognize the importance of that, it's really quite exciting. And really, the COVID-19, I know that the vaccines have really been transformative for COVID-19, but COVID-19 actually transformed vaccine field as well. And we're never going to be the same. We're always going to look back on this time as the pre-COVID and the post-COVID and all the amazing things we were able to do in such a short period of time, working together with other scientists in a very open way that we'd never done before to solve a common problem. And so while the vaccine area is all exciting for me, I've been working on it my life. What's even more exciting is how the scientific world got together to solve this problem together. And in the process has started, I think, a whole new revolution, if you will, or renaissance in science that new students graduating now are going to reap the benefits of for many years to come.
If you flash back, say 15 months ago, this area, the Seattle area, was one of the first epicenters of COVID-19 in the United States. And if you think back to that time and then compare where we are today, what takeaways have you learned, or what has surprised you from the last 15 months?
Prior to COVID-19, the fastest vaccine ever to be developed took 4 years to do.
4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just based on how vaccines were developed. We would have to do things very sequentially. We would have to wait until, say, research was published before we could build on other people's work. Now, we were working at the time with the RNA and the DNA vaccines that ended up, being the success stories.
Right.
And I always knew that they would be the type of vaccine to make it first across the finish line if there ever was a pandemic. In fact, most of my grants, I would always write, you got to fund me because one day we're going to have a pandemic and we're going to need to solve this problem. And this is the way to do it because these types of vaccines don't take as long to develop. We knew that. We got started right away in January when the sequence of the virus got published. We were able to get started. We made a vaccine within a week that we were already testing.
Wow.
So it's that
January 2020.
January
Wow.
2020. We were not waiting for the traditional peer review process, but just putting that online because we knew that other people could learn from what we just learned and then take it from there. And it was really this cooperation and collaboration among scientists worldwide that was able to bring this vaccines and the solution within a year.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I would have never predicted that just simply because that's not how we used to operate. But COVID-19 made a big change for us. Yeah.
Wow. And talk to me about what are you working on today, or what are the big things that are front of mind for you today as you think about the future?
Absolutely. So we're still working on COVID-19 vaccines because as long as there's virus replicating in the world somewhere, there's still going to be new variants that pop up and a potential threat to reducing the efficacy of our current vaccines. And so we're working on updating and testing new second and even third generation vaccines. Worldwide, the vaccination rate is very low. It's around 5 to 6% right now. So there's areas in the world that don't have vaccines, and our goal right now is try to develop new vaccines that are going to be able to be more effectively distributed worldwide to be able to bring immunity throughout the world and shut this down together.
Just talk to me a little bit about what it looks and feels like in your lab. What's your team like?
Yeah, I have about 20 researchers in my lab. I have a couple graduate students, 2 postdocs, what we call junior faculty, they're assistant professors. I have a number of technicians, and importantly, I have undergraduate researchers. That's the thing I learned from Hope is that the importance of starting early as an undergraduate in research. And I don't have to take undergraduate researchers, but that was something that in my lessons at Hope, that I felt that was something important that I wanted to carry forward in my own career.
Oh, Dr. Fuller, that's beautiful. It comes full circle back to exactly the experience you had with Dr. Gentile, and you're now doing that for undergraduates right here.
You bet.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And they will, for the rest of their lives, get to say that they worked with you during the pandemic on vaccines. That's pretty remarkable.
That's something I tell people. Our goal is to never have another pandemic again. That's my career goal, is to get to the point where we have vaccines and capabilities to stop a new outbreak before it ever causes a pandemic again.
Well, Dr. Fuller, we are so proud of you and all the work that you are doing. And so on behalf of Hope College, it's my honor to present to you the 2021 Distinguished Alumni Award.
Oh, thank you. This is such a wonderful honor. Oh my gosh. It's just, this is something I'll hold in pride for many years to come. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kate Ralston. I am a member of the Alumni Engagement Team at Hope College, and on behalf of the Alumni Board of Directors, I'm so excited to be here at Hope Scarves in Louisville, Kentucky, to honor and celebrate Lara McGregor, who is our 2021 Distinguished Alumni Award winner. At the age of 30, a successful associate vice president of development and 7 months pregnant with her second son, Lara McGregor was told she had breast cancer. While going through treatment, she had been blessed by a friend of a friend who offered scarves to wear on her head after losing her hair to chemo. That chemo thankfully sent her into remission, and when Lara went to return the scarves to their owner, she was told to just pass them along to another woman who needed them. The concept sparked an idea in Lara's heart, an idea that blossomed into Hope Scarves, a nonprofit organization in Louisville, Kentucky, of which Lara is the founder and director. Hope Scarves collects scarves and stories from people who face cancer and then sends them to others in treatment, creating a sisterhood of traveling scarves. Under Lara's leadership, Hope Scarves has raised over $1.1 million for metastatic breast cancer research and has sent out more than 17,000 scarves to every state in 26 countries. Lara also manages a successful podcast and blog titled My Hopeful Life, which chronicles her journey as she now finds herself fighting against stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. She recently shared an inspirational webinar with current students and alumni during Alumni Weekend 2021, highlighting a lifetime of turning heartbreak into hope. Lara is an example of the great impact one person can have on the world and has literally lived out her hopeful mission in the global community. She is an advocate, a successful businesswoman, a loving mother and wife, and an inspirational leader. We are overjoyed to be able to name her a Distinguished Alumni Award recipient for 2021.
Lara, it is an honor to be with you here at Hope Scarves. On behalf of Hope College, we are so inspired by you and proud of you for all that you're doing. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about all that you're doing. But before we talk about what you're doing now, let's jump back. Let's jump all the way back to your time at Hope College. What was it about your time at Hope College that you view now as transformational to put you on the path that you've been on?
It's hard to think of just one thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a sense that I received at Hope College. And it was a sense of connection and community, a sense of feeling like I belonged somewhere and that I was supported and I was loved, with the friends that I made that are, lifelong friendships that have continued to this day, with my professors who knew who I was, who cared about me, who encouraged me, who challenged me. Or I think a lot about the time I had with Delta Phi sorority and just the friendships I had, the leadership opportunities, and just a sense that this place was such a safe place to grow and learn and try new things, and gave me a confidence about myself that was really helped be a springboard, through the rest of my career.
Are there specific professors you remember who invested in you?
I love my friend Kelly and I always talk about Professor Pocock's public speaking presentation and how he taught us to make large, purposeful gestures that were indicative of what we were trying to say. I do a lot of public speaking. I almost always am like, what are my large, purposeful gestures? I think that having the chance to be a creative writer in college, where you are challenged and encouraged, helped me have the confidence and also the skills to be a writer now, today.
There's so much about your story that embodies liberal arts, and for you, a communications and English major, now providing hope through Hope Scars, but also supporting medical research, supporting cancer research. And there's so much about that story that models what liberal arts is and ought to be.
Yeah.
How do you reflect on your liberal arts education and how that got you here?
Well, I think when I was 18, I would have hated to have been pigeonholed into a career or a track that I thought maybe I wanted to take. And at Hope, I started as an education major. My parents are both teachers, and I loved my classes I took for the first couple of years, but I realized even though I'm really creative, I had to make a bulletin board one time, and I was like, I kind of hate this. I don't want to be in a classroom. I want to be out doing, but I had to go through the steps of trying and learning and seeing the perspective. And I think that's what liberal arts, in an undergraduate setting, gives you, is the chance to explore and to try a variety of things. And I knew I wanted to be a connector. I wanted to use my skills and my talents to help make the world a better place, but I had no idea what major was going to lead me to that. And so it was a combination of communications and English and some of my education classes, but also the chance to be a dancer and dance in the student production and take classes that helped me think broadly about areas that I maybe didn't know about before. Experience. And I went on from Hope to get a master's degree in a master's in public administration. So then I could hone in on nonprofit work and fundraising and the skills I needed to have a career in nonprofit. But it was the liberal arts foundation that prepared me to go on to graduate school to do that and work in the nonprofit sector.
Speaking of a career in the nonprofit world, you've had a remarkable career. You started an amazing organization, Hope Scars. Let's talk a little bit about Hope Scars. Tell me the story of how it was founded, and then talk to me a little bit about what Hope Scars is doing today.
So the mission of Hope Scars is to support people facing cancer through scarves, stories, and research. And the idea happened from my own personal experience. When I was 30 years old and 7 months pregnant, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And my world got turned upside down. I was healthy, on the top of my game. We never saw this coming. I had no family history. Cancer just rocked our world. And a friend of a friend sent me a scarf and a note that said, "You can do this." And I wore Kelly's scarves throughout my treatment. And every time I put that Hope scarf on, I felt her love and support. And just knowing this other young woman had faced cancer helped me believe that I could too. And when I had finished my treatment, I asked her for her address to send the scarf back. And she said, just find somebody else who can use it. And so I went to a conference for young women with breast cancer. And I met a woman named Roberta from Pittsburgh. And I gave her this scarf. And I realized how much this piece of fabric had meant to me, both in receiving it when I needed it, but also in passing it on and telling Roberta the same words of encouragement that Kelly had told me as she was starting her treatment, and how it helped me heal and reflect by sharing my hope with her. And so that day I started thinking, I'm going to start a nonprofit organization, and it's going to be called Hope Scarves, and we're going to collect scarves and stories from people who had faced cancer and pass them on to others in treatment. I knew all how nonprofits worked, I knew how fundraising worked, but I hadn't ever started one of my own. And so I just started writing a business plan and putting together the pieces of how it would work. And I started it with my 2-year-old volunteer by my side in my spare bedroom of my house. And just started collecting scarves and stories and networking and built a website. And the momentum really grew from this authentic connection of storytelling, of support, of community, of helping women feel less alone through their treatment, and beautiful, and wrapping that scarf around their head or around their shoulders or however they want to use it, that they can feel connected to someone else who's faced cancer. Because you can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel really alone until you connect with someone else who's walked in your shoes and who can really relate to what you're going through. From my spare bedroom in my house to now a bustling office in an international nonprofit organization, we've sent nearly 20,000 Hope scarves to every state and 26 countries. And we've also expanded our mission to raise money for metastatic breast cancer research, which is really very important to me. My cancer, unfortunately, like every cancer survivor's worst nightmare, came back in 2014. So 7 years after my original diagnosis, and was metastatic. So stage 4 had spread to my bones. And at that time, we looked at what we were doing at Hope Scarves and realized that scarves and stories are beautiful, they're practical, they're inspiring, but they're not going to save anyone's life. And if we really wanted to change the way people experience cancer, we also wanted to be part of investing in science and in research, and specifically metastatic breast cancer research. Because of the millions of dollars raised for breast cancer, only about 5% goes to metastatic breast cancer, for helping people who have already metastasized live longer, have more treatment options. The average life expectancy for metastatic breast cancer is 2 to 3 years. And I just, as a young mom with my little boys, I felt like I had to try to do anything I could to change those statistics. And it's also been a really beautiful way for me to help share the more complete story of breast cancer. I think a lot of time people think, oh, you get breast cancer, you're in treatment for about a year, and then you're good, and you go on, and you're a survivor, and you celebrate survivorship. And though I did that for 7 years, I didn't do anything wrong for my cancer to metastasize. I was completely out of my control. And then what the reality is for people who become stage 4, and how few treatment options there are, and just helping tell that whole story of breast cancer has really helped for me to help give a voice to a lot of people who are living with metastatic disease and who didn't feel part of the breast cancer narrative. And so I've been really trying to change that, to tell the broader picture. And so we don't use words like beating cancer at Hope Scarves. We talk about facing cancer. And there's a bell in a lot of cancer centers that you ring when you're done with treatment and you finish chemo or radiation. And as a metastatic patient, I will never finish treatment. I'm be in treatment the rest of my life. So I ring the bell every time. Every time I finish treatment, I ring the bell, because I just think I got through today. And that's how I try to live my life, is just finding joy and hope one day at a time, not waiting for the storm to pass, but just finding light and love in the midst of the storm.
It's amazing. Like I said at the beginning, we're so proud of you. I'm just inspired sitting here with you. My mom passed away from metastatic breast cancer, so this is personal to me, and we at Hope are just so proud of you. I just have to say, we were walking around and one of your colleagues described you as someone who spews hope everywhere you go. And that's exactly been my experience in the brief time I've been with you. And just over the course of this conversation, you're exuding hope in the midst of very challenging times. You started Hope Scarves. You have a podcast called A Hopeful Life, is that right? And you're a person who spews hope, and you went to Hope College. It seems like there's a theme here, a theme of hope.
Absolutely. It's funny because here in Kentucky, where I live right now, people aren't as familiar with Hope College. And so as I tell them about Hope College, they're like, you went to Hope College? Like, seriously, like, they find that hilarious.
It's on brand.
It's so on brand. Hope to me is like, it's like faith. It's like believing in something that you can't see or hold, that is not contingent on the outcome. It is bigger than you or me, or the scan, or the test result. It is like my foundation. It's also kind of like my pilot light that, just keeps burning. Sometimes it gets dimmer, sometimes it's really bright, but it is like just this light that guides me. And, I believe the bravest thing is to always hope. And I have certainly been challenged in that. I have been in times when I have lost my hope, or it's gotten very dim. I've had very dark days through my cancer experience. And I think I come back to hope. I come back to this deep understanding that there's something bigger than me, than my situation. There is something more powerful than I understand. And for me, I use the word hope to embody that. Other people, have other words, but for me, it's always been hope.
My take is it's probably not a coincidence. I think God brought you to Hope College so that you could be an ambassador for what the ideal means in the world. So thanks for all you're doing. We're inspired by you and proud of you.
Thank you.
Laura, we are so proud of you and inspired by you. And on behalf of Hope College, it's my honor to give you the 2021 Distinguished Alumni Award.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I am so humbled and honored to receive this award, and it just means so much, not only to have had the experience as a student and all that I've learned from Hope, but to be recognized for the life I've led after. It's truly meaningful. Thank you.